It's been 2 months since we made our bold predictions for this year, and after Friday's win, we've officially hit the halfway point on Nebraska's season. It's bittersweet. Bitter because it feels like it just got started, but sweet since there's still hope that this team can make a bowl game and possibly even win their division. The top four teams in the West all play each other this weekend, so we'll have more clarity on where things stand this time next week. But until then, I'm enjoying every moment of hope that we still got. You've been asking me for a revised season prediction ever since Scott Frost got fired, so today I'm giving you my prediction for these last 6 games. We'll revisit my preseason hot takes to see which ones still have a chance to hit, and we'll talk about the Big Ten West race since this is the first time in years that both Wisconsin and Iowa are at the bottom of the standings. But what's up, guys? I'm Connor Hayden, and this is Corn Crazed. If you're a fan of Nebraska or the Big Ten, make sure you hit the subscribe button below because we're less than 500 away from hitting 15,000. And if you're all aboard the Bill Busch train after the D held IU and Rutgers to 27 total points, hit the like button now to help us get to 1,000. But now, let's get into it.
Yan across midfield. Touchdown, Nebraska! Omar Manning.
After the games these last 2 weeks, rather than wait to make a video reaction, I've been going live immediately after so we can get all our feelings out and you can hear exactly what I'm thinking about the team in the heat of the moment. It's kind of like a post-game party with 1,000 of you guys, so I've had a great time doing that and we're going to keep it going, win or lose. So if you want to jump in on those streams, I start about 15 minutes after the game ends, and if you're subscribed, you'll end up getting a notification for that. I want to share a quick YouTube hack for those who aren't aware of all the tricks with this site, because some people complain that I have a 5-minute countdown when they go back to watch the live replays, or they just complain because they want to watch a specific 2-minute part of my 12-minute videos. So at the bottom of all the content I put out, there's a red scroll bar with breaks and titles that tells you when the countdown ends, where the video starts, and in videos like this one, which chapter of the video is where. So if you ever want to skip what you're watching and get on to the next thing, just drag that little red bar and you can find whatever part you came for. You're welcome. I know I talk about our Corn Crazed community a bunch, and it's mostly an online thing, but I've met a ton of subscribers and supporters in real life now, and this weekend I was invited out to the USC Washington State game by Gino, who started watching the channel over a year ago. You might recognize his name since I posted the link to the Adrian Martinez doc that he created while he was working in the Nebraska football video department last year. But now he works as the director of cinematography at SC, and he gave my friends and I tickets to the game yesterday, which happened to be my first SC game in 3 years, so it was good to see a win. He's an extremely talented creator, and you can see his work all over the USC football Instagram or Twitter pages, but I had a great time there, and I had to share it with you since he's a friend that I made through our community. And I'm sure I'll meet more of you as time goes on, but this is a prime example of why I created this channel. I wanted more friends who enjoy Nebraska and college football as much as I do. And now I feel like I've got a bunch. So again, thank you for that. Now, we got to talk about my preseason hot takes, and there were 7 I came up with that I felt pretty good about. But as we've gone on, my predictions are evolving. So let's look at these and see what can still hit and what was just a total miss on my end. First, I had IGC to go for over 700 yards as the number 2 receiver on the offense. And I'm not going to lie, after that Northwestern game, I was feeling pretty damn confident in this one. He had the first touchdown of the year, he had 4 catches for 120 yards, and he would have had more if he didn't fumble, and he looked like a serious threat that Mickey would at the very least work into the 5-man rotation. And I know there are a ton of rumors. People are saying he's been hurt, some think that he's redshirting, some say that he could transfer out to a Pac-12 school, and I don't know what's true, and I'm not here to speculate, but the reality is, it doesn't look like he's going to play anytime soon since Tommy Hill took number 2 in the Rutgers game so he could play receiver. So to me, it's disappointing because I had really high hopes for the guy, and I have a ton of respect for him after hearing him talk in multiple interviews and after he battled back from injury in the spring to have a huge first game. The number 2 in yards so far is Marcus Washington, who has 18 catches for 266. So he's on pace to hit 532, which is a little short of the 700 I thought we'd see, but I won't count him out completely from hitting that. My second hot take was a defining moment on special teams, but the note I made here was that it had to be in a Big Ten game. So even though they blocked a punt against North Dakota, I didn't count that one. But fortunately, Kolarevic blocked one against IU and Hartzog ran it back for a score, and that completely shifted the momentum to help Nebraska jump out to a 14-point lead in the second quarter. Special teams has had their issues, but this still counts as a defining moment, and that's my first hot take prediction that came true for us this year. My third hot take was that Garrett Nelson would have over 10 sacks this season, which would be a huge jump from his 5 total in 2021. He's got 4.5 so far, and only one of those came before the Indiana game. So maybe now that Shenander's gone, he's taken his play up a notch. Nelson and Mathis are both playing way better football these last 2 weeks, so my guess is the pass rush is here to stay, and Nelson still gets to at least 11 this year, like I predicted. At number 4, I had a top 25 total defense. And yeah, this is nearly impossible now. The good news is Mickey finally got rid of Shenander, who, outside of one season with COVID seniors, hasn't ever got the defense to play at the black shirt level we'd expect. After the OU blowout, Bill Busch inherited the third worst defense in college football, and after only 2 weeks, he's already boosted them to number 116 nationally, and he held Rutgers and IU to a combined 27 points and 638 yards. For comparison, in the Georgia Southern game alone, Shenander's unit allowed 642 yards and 45 points. There's no way this D cracks the top 50, unfortunately, but they can keep climbing those rankings now that they're tackling way better. Luke Reimer and Garrett Nelson are back to playing at the level we saw last season, and Bush is finding out which DBs can make plays on the ball. My number 5 was for Casey to throw over 25 touchdown passes, and as of now, he's only thrown 9. To hit 26, he needed to throw 2.1 per game, but he's only throwing 1.5, which is pretty surprising since they played North Dakota, Georgia Southern, and the 3 worst teams in the Big Ten. To go over 25, he'd need to throw at least 4 touchdowns in a couple games down the stretch, and at this point, that's looking pretty unlikely. Casey's been awesome at times, but he's limited by the O-line, and without some more help, he's not going to reach his full potential this year. Number 6 was that we'd see an all Big Ten performer from this team, and as of now, I see 4 who could potentially fight for a spot. First is Anthony Grant, who would need a few 200-yard games, and even then, he'll be struggling to beat out Brown from Illinois and Corum from Michigan. Next is Trey Palmer, who's been by far the most targeted receiver and one of the most clutch guys on the team. He's averaging 7 catches a game, and he's on pace to go for over 1,000 yards. And next is Garrett Nelson, who started really slow, but he was preseason first team All Big Ten, and Bill Busch has found ways to get him to be more productive, so I'm not going to count him out. And last is Luke Reimer, who had a really rough first few weeks with missed tackles, but he's bounced back strong in these last 2 games, and he's been playing at a level similar to what we saw from him last year. And last, at number 7, I had Ramir Johnson scoring 10 touchdowns. And I completely missed on this one because Ramir's barely been on the field at all this year. I think he plays special teams, but I don't think the coaches want to use him since the line's been so bad early on, and because Grant ended up being really elusive and he makes things happen when there's nothing there, so it makes sense to leave him in. A.J. Allen was another guy who took carries away from Johnson, but he's done for the year after his injury, so Yant and Irvin are the new 2 and 3 behind Grant, and it looks like Ramir might not end up playing at all this season, which could end in, well, I don't need to say it because you know how these things go. If I could only make one mid-season hot take that I thought would hit, I'd go with Nebraska to win 6 games and to make a bowl. And on that note, let's jump into my updated record prediction for this season. But real quick before we do, I gotta shout out a couple of the winners I saw in our group on BroThrow. First was Austin, who put $100 on Clemson minus 21 in a road game at Boston College, and Clemson ended up winning by 28, so a pretty easy $100 win there. Nice pickup. Then we had Evan, who was making smaller $4 to $10 plays, and he ended up going 4-1 on Saturday, with his only loss being TCU minus 7.5. That half point really hurt there. But I might have to follow your plays next week, Evan, because I myself had a rough 3-6 weekend on all the games I played. But we've still got over 3 months of college football and NFL left. So if you want to get in our group on the site, Head to brothrow.com/GBR or click the link in the description to make an account without having to link a bank account and without having to deal with any minimums or fees. And Brothrow can be used in any state in the US. You just have to be 18 or older with a PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, or one of the other payment options the site offers. I've already saved $65 since this is the only sports betting platform that doesn't take a cut off every bet. So if you end up joining the group, let me know your favorite picks for next weekend in the group chat. Back to my mid-season record prediction, and let me remind you that in August, I had Nebraska going 8-4 with a floor of 6-6, and yeah, things have changed. I got to keep it real, so I'll say the new ceiling is 6-6, the most likely is 5-7, and if everything goes to hell, 4-8. Which is crazy to think that that's still a better record than last year's 3-9, but still not something I'd be happy about. In the 4-8 scenario, I guess Nebraska loses the next 5 in decently competitive fashion, but at the end in a road game at Iowa, they hold strong on defense and do just enough on offense to finally beat them in their worst season since before we joined the Big Ten. And I'm really confident in beating Iowa because every year they have a strong D, and every year Nebraska still scores 20 plus. So take away their decent offense they usually have, and I think Mickey's got a really good chance to close on a strong note. But in the 5-7 scenario, I think Nebraska gets lucky and beats either Wisconsin or Illinois at home, coming off a road loss against Michigan or Purdue, and then they finish how I said before with Iowa. And in the 6-6 hot take prediction, which I actually do think will happen, Nebraska ends up losing to Purdue. They beat Illinois or Minnesota at home. Then they lose to Michigan and finish strong against Wisconsin at home before Iowa week. And that would put Nebraska in a bowl game against what I guess would be an 8-win MAC team or a really bad ACC team. And Nebraska fans everywhere would call this season successful given the circumstances. There were 3 things I noticed in the Rutgers and Indiana games that make me feel both nervous and excited for these coming up. So the first is that the O-line will determine the outcome of Purdue, Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. But I don't include Michigan in that group because I think they're just too talented and they have way too big of an advantage being at home. So it's going to take more than a serviceable offensive line to win that one. Keep this in mind. Our left tackle had a 0.0 pass blocking grade against Rutgers, and he allowed 10 of the 21 total QB hurries. Casey isn't even getting a chance to make his reads downfield without multiple hands in his face and dudes breathing down his neck. The second thing is that Mickey trusts his staff enough to make the necessary adjustments without interfering with their process. Bill Bush started playing both Malcolm Hartzog and Brandon Moore in the DB room, and although Hartzog got burned twice early on against Rutgers, he bounced back to have the game-sealing interception, and earlier on, he had a shot at another one that went right through his hands. Give him a little more time and experience, and he comes down with that one too. Brandon Moore had a pick Friday night, and even more impressive, he had the highest PFF grade out of all the DBs against Rutgers. Another guy who hasn't played much, but looks like he could take a starting role going forward. And the third thing I've noticed is that this front 7 is getting back to playing at a level we expected before the year started. On Friday night, Luke Reimer graded out as a 90 overall. He had 5 tackles and 2 pass breakups, and once again, didn't miss a tackle. Garrett Nelson had the highest grade for anybody on the line and ended up with 7 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 4 pressures. And that's the second game in a row where he's gotten to the QB twice. There's no doubt this defense is getting better like we hoped they would, but with more injuries on the O-line and the tougher part of the schedule coming up, I'm not going to lie to you and say I'm not nervous for what lies ahead. And we'll end with my thoughts on the Big Ten West race that right now has Illinois, Nebraska, and Purdue all tied for first place. Who would have thought that these 3 would lead the pack after Purdue lost at home to Penn State, Nebraska lost to Northwestern, and Illinois lost to Indiana? It's honestly crazy to think about, but it's not actually that crazy given the circumstances. The 2 traditional West powers in Iowa and Wisconsin are in their worst seasons in years. Iowa has the 131st ranked offense in the country, behind Colorado, Colorado State, both New Mexico schools, and UMass. Wisconsin's offensive line and quarterback situation are as bad as they've ever seen, and it's going to be a tough road for them to get back into the picture, even with Jim Leonard there to fix things. This week, the top 4 in the West all play each other, and both Minnesota and Purdue are the favorites over Illinois and Nebraska. But at this point, literally any of them can win. The talent's almost identical at every school in the West, and it just comes down to who the best coach is that day and which players want it more. Fleck, Bielema, and Braum are the most proven, but all 3 of their teams can easily drop a game to Wisconsin, Iowa, or Nebraska. So this race won't get more clear until at least early November, and a loss this week doesn't mean Nebraska's out of it. So I'd expect a 3 or maybe even a 4-loss team to win the division at this point, unless Minnesota somehow goes on a roll and wins back-to-back road games against Illinois and Penn State. But I want to know what you think, so let me know in the comments below. Can Nebraska make a run for the West, or is their fate already decided? Is 3-3 a realistic goal for the back end of this schedule, or is that a little too optimistic with the play in the trenches? I'm still a believer that Whipple can find a way to make it work, but I'm worried about Casey staying healthy if he's going to keep taking these hits in competitive games the rest of the way. I'm back on Tuesday with the Purdue game preview and predictions, so until next time, thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Go Big Red.